هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون.
One night, as flames danced on the darkened cave walls, Muhammad's life changed forever. Suddenly, an angel in the form of a man appeared and commanded him proclaim. Muhammad was terrified and confused and said he had nothing to proclaim. The angel clasped Muhammad in a suffocating embrace. Harder and harder he was squeezed until it seemed the last breath of life would be wrung from his body.
Proclaim in the name of thy Lord who created man from a clot of blood. Proclaim, and thy Lord is most bountiful.
In the year 610, a 40-year-old Arab businessman with a wife and a family had been suddenly visited by an angel and commanded to become God's messenger. Slowly, Muhammad ibn Abdullah began to accept that God wished him to speak to his people, as Moses and Christ had carried God's word in another time.
He is Allah, the one and only, Allah, the eternal, absolute. He begetteth not, nor is he begotten, and there is none like unto him.
There could be no greater loyalty than to God, not to any tribal deity, not to some traditional idol, not even to the tribe. This mild-mannered merchant was now demanding Arabs forsake the gods of their ancestors.
Their real identity was rooted in their family and clan and kin connections, because it was that gave them a position in the world. When Muhammad comes with a new set of religious ideas, or is trying to renew a set of religious ideas focused on monotheism, people whose ancestors had been pagans said, what's happened to our grandfathers, our great-grandfathers? And Muhammad had to say, well, they're burning in hell because they didn't believe in one God.
This new commandment was to be called Islam, meaning an act of surrender. As more revelations came, the words were etched into Muhammad's memory. As he recited them, they were written down and became the Quran, God's holy book. At first, only Khadija and a few close friends and family accepted the Quran. But little by little, Muhammad started to speak out, and Arabs and other clans of the Quraysh began to embrace the message.
Bound together by an ideal, by a shared ideology, by a shared religion, not by blood. He was creating, as it were, a super tribe where people were not related to one another, but they were related to one another in faith and by agreement.
If you think about 7th century Arabia being based on tribal kinship, the idea of a community based on a faith that anyone could join, slave, woman, man, rich, poor, dark, light, was revolutionary, and of course very menacing for some.
Given his conviction was so public in preaching this message, then more and more of this was taken by the Quraysh establishment as a direct threat.
The new message of Islam now ripped the fabric of the Quraysh community. Soon, like Jesus before him, Muhammad's ministry was turning father against son, family against family.
The establishment certainly feared that a man who claimed to be receiving special messages from Allah, the high God of the Arabian pantheon, would soon demand greater political powers.
The most powerful Quraysh leaders turned on Muhammad and his followers. Muslims were tortured. Some were whipped, others staked for days in the fierce Arabian sun. Muhammad himself endured the fury of his neighbors, who hurled dirt and insults at him in the streets. For 2 years, Quraysh leaders placed a ban on intermarriage and trade with any followers of Islam. No one was allowed to sell them food. The agony of this period increased when Khadija died in 619. When his uncle died not long after, he lost his protector, and it became clear that Muhammad's life was in real danger.
His wife is dead, his uncle is dead. Although he has followers, many of them are being tortured, imprisoned, persecuted. He is powerless to help many of those that he loves, and many of those that have believed him.
The flight from Mecca in 622 is known to Muslims as the Hijrah. No event has greater importance in the culture of Islam. It became the start of the Muslim calendar.
It was because it was the start of the establishment of the Muslim community. So that unlike the Gregorian calendar that starts with the birth date of Christ, the Muslim calendar, or the Islamic calendar, which is based on the lunar calendar, is one that is based on this concept of community.
When Muhammad arrived in Yathrib, people rushed to meet him, and all wanted the honor of having him stay in their house. Instead, Muhammad allowed his favorite camel, Qaswa, to wander unguided through the town. When at last Qaswa stopped and fell to her knees, Muhammad declared that was the spot where he would live. He ordered work to begin on a house and the first mosque. Henceforth, Yathrib would be called Medina, a name simply meaning the city. But the greatest change would be in the very nature of the community itself. Muhammad's visions brought new words to unite both his own followers from Mecca and the people of Medina. The Quran now had a new verse.
Those who believed and made the Hijrah, and those who gave their homes and helped, these are the protectors of one another.
What he began to create in Medina was something that was absolutely unheard of and novel.
Muhammad was now a political leader. That meant he was making decisions affecting the workforce, the economy, trade, and the safety and security of Medina. To protect the struggling young community, Muhammad knew the basic politics of Arabia would need to change, and that meant the threat of the Quraysh would have to be met. Increasingly, Muhammad would turn to a solution the world has come to fear and all too often associate with Islam. He would turn to armed conflict. Since the days in Mecca, God's revelations had called for Muslims to prepare themselves to struggle to build a moral and righteous life. The Arabic word for this moral struggle is jihad. Jihad would soon be needed if the Muslim community was to survive. For when the Prophet and his followers had left Mecca, it was clear to all that a day would come when they would have to defend their beliefs in battle. Now that day was fast approaching.
Permission is given to fight because they are wronged. Verily, Allah is most powerful for their aid. They are those who have been expelled from their homes.
God had given